all of our live streams right now. And when I get the signal, if Director Lane, if you will open your meeting, and then President Schul, if you'll open your meeting as well too. But give me about another 1 minute until we get started here. Here we got a 4 o'clock start time. President Lane, if you'll call the SLDC meeting to order.
Good afternoon. Today is Tuesday, March 2nd, 2021. Inviting you to the joint meeting of the Sugar Land Development Corporation, the governing body of the City of Sugar Land, and Sugar Land 4B Corporation. I would like to open the meeting for the Sugar Land Development Corporation.
And President Schul, if you'll open up SL4B.
Yep. So March 2nd, 2021, open the meeting for the Sugar Land 4B Corporation. Sugar Land 4B Corporation. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, item number 1, call to order. Item number 2, public comment. City Secretary, do we have any comments from the public to submit now?
No, ma'am, we sure don't.
Okay. Item number 3, workshop. Item A, review and discussion on the Workforce and Targeted Industry Analysis Strategic Project. Devin Rodriguez, Economic Development Assistant Director.
Good afternoon, everybody. And first of all, I just want to say thank you all for jumping on this joint meeting so that we could cover this information with both of the boards at one time. Really appreciate your assistance with that. So I'm going to be kicking this off by reviewing a little bit of background on how we got here, and then I would like to introduce our consultant team that we are recommending for this project, and they will go over some of the scope that they are proposing as part of our request, as well as introduce you to their team and breadth of knowledge. So to start off, I just want to give a little bit of background. So the corporations 4A and 4B corporations were established in 1993 and 1995 respectively. And the first economic development plan for the Economic Development Department was approved in 2001. And it was really serving as a roadmap for what the city's economic development efforts were going to be. And laid out that framework and that program outline for the things that we wanted to achieve, with the goal of creating a robust and diversified economy, which would enhance the quality of life for all of our residents here in Sugar Land. So many of the accomplishments that came out of that 2001 Economic Development Plan was development of our incentives program, as well as establishment of a tourism program, and a continued expansion of the University of Houston at Sugar Land. So many great achievements came out of that effort of putting a strategy and a framework together for what we would like to achieve for economic development in Sugar Land. Then in 2008, we began a 2-phase process similar to what we are going to be talking about for this effort. So first, there was the collection of data, who was in Sugar Land, what type of businesses, how could we best position ourselves for attracting certain types of industries that we already had those types of elements that those businesses might be looking for. And then we completed the update of the economic development plan. So the strategy, the framework, the program outline of what we wanted to achieve with that data that backed up what we were really honing and focusing in on in 2011. And some of what came out of the accomplishments that came out of that 2011 plan was really the city building up its office employment. It also established the Visit Sugarland as our tourism-focused group. And then also there was a focus on the development of our destination venues. So, of course, we all know Constellation Field and Smart Financial. And so that was a main focus of the Economic Development Group moving forward after that 2011 plan. In 2017, we completed an initiative to create a uniform brand, which is what you see in our sweet, real, and refined logo that we have some of the pictures there up on the PowerPoint. And we are continuing to implement that brand now. So you'll see, you'll remember that last summer we launched our new website with the branding that was developed as part of that 2017 marketing and branding effort. We have a little snapshot of our new website that we launched last summer there on the screen to remind you all of that accomplishment that was underway. And then also last fall, we engaged DCI for an integrated marketing strategy, which is currently underway. So with that effort, we're really looking to make sure that we are kind of singing the praises of Sugar Land, not just in Texas, but outside of Texas. So we really want to elevate our persona of who Sugar Land is to national and international businesses that are looking to relocate or expand. And so that's part of that effort as well. Next slide, please. Thank you. So now why is the time that we are kind of embarking on this effort? In fiscal year 20, which a lot of our fiscal year 20 has been taken up, and some now of our fiscal year 21 has been taken up by the pandemic. But at the start of that, before all of this, the City Council had added update the Economic Development Strategic Plan as one of our strategic projects. And so we were beginning to develop of what was the next steps that we wanted to take as part of that strategic project. At the same time, the city's visioning efforts were also starting and underway of sort of like what is the next step for Sugar Land. And so these were really going hand in hand. With that, we developed that we wanted to do this two-phased approach, which was phase one, which is what we're talking about today, which is conduct a workforce analysis and targeted industry assessment. With this data, we'll be able to immediately begin any sort of new business recruitment efforts for new business types that we might have not previously been going after, but we definitely should because of this new data we've developed. So that will be able to allow us to do that right away. And then the second part will be to update the economic development plan. And we want to be able to do that once we have the data from phase one, but also once the city's visioning efforts have concluded. So everything will be going hand in hand. Now, the COVID-19 pandemic did delay the start of phase one, so we were hoping to do that last fiscal year. But it's actually good because now we have allowed for some changes to happen and things are kind of leveling out. It has accelerated some of the trends that were already occurring. And we really have sufficient data now to demonstrate and forecast what are some of the permanent and temporary impacts of the pandemic and move forward with those in mind. Also, businesses are also really kind of getting out of this wait and see mentality and are looking to plan for the future. So being able to conduct this phase one, get that data under our belts, and then use it immediately for our business recruitment efforts while we work on updating the economic development plan with the city's visioning efforts that are underway, it is good timing for all of those things to take place. Next slide, please. So phase one, our project goals, it should actually say phase two of updating the city's economic development strategy. So this phase one is going to set us up for phase two. It also is going to immediately support and direct our economic development's ongoing immediate recruitment efforts, which I just spoke about, and also inform our department's ongoing and future marketing efforts. So this will help us continue to work with DCI on what our current marketing efforts are and strategize for what other things we might want to be focusing on in our marketing efforts with DCI as well. And next slide, please. So I just want to briefly cover the process that we've taken. That's sort of the background, how we got here, why are we proposing this now? So what is the purchasing process that we've gone through to get to today, where we have a recommended consultant that we would like to introduce to you all and have this discussion. So we sent our request for proposals that was released on January 13th. 4 proposals were received by the January 28th deadline, and we assembled an evaluation committee of 4 individuals. 1 individual from the Greater Houston Partnership, who we regularly work with on our economic development efforts, our Director of Aviation, Beth Rosenbaum, myself, and then Alba Pinate Johnson, who is our Business Development Manager. So I think that we brought together a really good group of all the different elements that would be focusing on what this effort is in terms of workforce and targeted industry. So the evaluation committee reviewed and scored the proposals based on, what is the project management plan that they proposed? Did they read our RFP and understand really what we were asking for, and what was their comprehensive approach to assisting us with completing this project? Who were they going to be bringing in expertise-wise? What types of tools and data sets that they had available, and the process that they would be implementing for us to get to the deliverables that we were asking for. Then, of course, pricing, past experience with similar projects similar to what we were asking for, and then references, of course. So from the evaluation committee, 2 firms were selected for interviews, and so we conducted those interviews and also scored those as well. And the evaluation committee recommended Ernst Young, or what we call EY, for the contract consideration. And so that is the group that I'm going to be introducing you to today. And so at this time, I'm going to hand it over to Amy Holloway with EY, as well as Chris Ingalls, also as part of the team, and will be part of our daily contact as well. And so I want to introduce you to those 2 individuals, and they will be going over of the scope of work that we've discussed, as well as some of their breadth of experience. And then at the conclusion of the presentation, we'll definitely open this up for discussion and questions. So Amy?
Thank you, Devin. And Devin, just so I know, how much time do we have on the agenda today? I want to make sure we're...
Yeah, so I think that we should have at least another 15 to 20 minutes for your guys' portion and have plenty of time for questions.
That's perfect.
Just our quarterly report that we're going over today.
Okay, very good. Well, hi everyone. It's nice to be with you virtually. My name is Amy Holloway. I'm National Director of EY's Economic Development Practice, and I'm joined here by Chris Ingle, who is our Associate National Director of EY's Economic Development Practice. And we really appreciate the time today to share with you our experience, our qualifications for this, as well as an overview of the scope that we've proposed. I want to start by saying, this is actually a great time to start thinking about strategy, and I like the way that you've separated this into 2 different phases. So the target and the workforce analysis that will then move into a strategy. I think the timing of our process, we want to work fairly quickly to provide these analyses for you, so you can go into strategy, and that'll time out just about right with us hopefully being over the pandemic and everyone back on their feet operating normally again. So if you'll click to the next slide, I just want to do some introductions and of course our approach, like I said. If you'll click to the next slide. Introductions wise, so this is the team from EY who's going to be working with you. You have 2 of us on the phone today, but there's a whole army of other individuals we brought together with specialty in workforce analysis and target industry analysis as well. Of course, Chris and I are leaders of the practice. You'll also have on your team John Reese, who's our National Research Director, Jennifer Vernon, who's a specialist in operational excellence and will be brought in at the end of the project to help with some of our assessment of your own economic development initiative, and Jennifer Burrington, who is a researcher with our team. Our practice, just for a little bit of background, Chris and I and our team members actually joined EY in March of 2020 through an acquisition. So prior to joining EY, we were with a boutique consulting firm out of Austin called Avalanche Consulting. And Avalanche is a national economic development strategy firm. Our services haven't changed, but we were acquired by EY to come over and lead and grow its economic development practice. We have about 25 years of experience as economic development strategists. In fact, way back when, I was trying to remember when it was, but Chris and I led some strategy work for the city of Sugar Land and Fort Bend County. I think it was around 2002, 2003. So we're familiar with the community. It's been fun watching you guys grow and evolve. When we were brought into EY, this is some background, we are the sister practice to EY's global site selection team. And there happen to be a few members of the site selection team there in the EY's Houston office, and we've invited them to be part of our process as well, just to weigh in along the way, review the workforce analysis findings, and provide input on global industry trends, global site selection trends, and weigh in on the target industries that we recommend for Sugar Land. So Ryan and Melissa are there in the Houston office, and then Aaron Abersman is based in Kansas City, but he is the West Region practice leader for the site selection team. So we bring you this well-rounded team, and if you'll click to the next slide, I've mentioned this, but we have worked with over 200 communities across the country, being based in Texas. And actually, personally, I grew up in the Houston area. So we've done a lot of work in Texas, in the Houston metro, in addition to our past work with Fort Bend County and Sugar Land and Missouri City. We've also led strategies for the Bay Area Houston Partnership, for Baytown, for LaPorte. We've done work in Katy. We've done work in the Woodlands. Also across the state, we've done quite a bit of work in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, including some of these more premier addresses in North Dallas. So we understand the dynamics of the state. We understand the dynamics of the greater Houston area as well. We've also done work with most major regions of the U.S., including Charlotte, Atlanta, Jacksonville, Florida, Miami, Columbus, Ohio, Cincinnati, and dozens of really thriving, growing, mid-sized communities across the nation. So happy to answer any questions you guys have on our experience. I do want you to know as we go into this that we approach economic development from a very holistic perspective. So while business attraction is definitely part of an economic development strategy, as you guys know, being on the 4A and 4B boards, there's a lot of things that go on at home to make your community more competitive. And there's a lot of topics at the table right now. We put human health up there on the top of our dial, but human health is now a consideration for economic development. Obviously, quality of life, your built environment, the alignment of talent, your innovation and entrepreneurship ecosystem. So we consider a lot of different factors when we develop our economic development strategies. And if you'll click to the next slide before I hand it over to Chris to talk about our process, we are connected to EY's global network of experts. So as I said, we're a sister practice to the site selection team. We also are close partners with EY's, they call it Quest, but it's their very large team of economists and statisticians. We're within their global government and public sector network, and a whole host of other, we've got industry experts around the world too, who we can tap into if we're wondering what's going on within a specific industry or a specific geography that you might be targeting in your economic development efforts. And then before I hand it over to Chris, one last thing I want to say, I've talked a lot about economic development strategy and the holistic approach that we have to that. Within almost every one of our economic development strategies, we will conduct a workforce analysis and a target industry analysis. Sometimes we do those things independently of a strategy, like in your case, but it's something that we've done dozens and dozens of times across the nation. So I just wanted to point that out, that we've got great experience in those two specific aspects of economic development. And Chris, I'm going to hand it over to you to just review our scope, and then want to give you guys a quick example of a project that we've recently worked on and opened up for questions.
Great, thank you very much. Hopefully you can see me. Can you? Yes, all right, you sure?
We can see you, yes.
Great. Let's see. Okay, yeah, there we are. So I'm going to talk about the timeline and the project, and then I'm going to give you a case study. So again, Chris Engel here, Associate National Director. It's great to be with you here this afternoon. Next slide, please. So we took the RFP and a very comprehensive scope and tried to summarize it. And I think we did a good job of breaking it into really three buckets. There's this workforce analysis that really aims to understand how your labor force stacks up, what's its characteristics, and how do you compare against other competitor or peer cities. We'll probably focus on the ones in Texas. I also want to evaluate what are the job demands of your local employers, and also look at the skills that are in your workforce that might be commuting out to other employers that could be captured and used as a recruitment tool for new jobs and employers in your city. And of course, how do we ensure that human capital formation continues in Sugar Land and both attract and develop your workforce in the coming years? The target industry analysis is really a way to evaluate your competitive advantages. So how can we capture growth using these advantages in selected target industries? Do you have the sites to support target industry operations? You've enjoyed a lot of growth over the years, and availability of greenfield sites is going to become an issue for you. So we want to evaluate and look at your current availability and make sure that it is used wisely. And then the third key question is, are your incentive policies aligned with those target industries? And of course, with the pandemic, a lot has changed, so we'll be looking at it through that lens. The third objective is really about your organization and benchmarking your organization against other ED groups in the state like you. So we'll be looking at other cities, other 4A, 4B cities, and how they approach economic development, and particularly look at the organizational structure and resources to support this target industry growth that we're seeking. Next slide, please. So this project will happen over about 5 months. We're going to dive in immediately once we start get that contract signed and approved into this workforce analysis. We'll be doing a benchmark. We'll work with Devin and her team to identify suburban cities that you'd like to compare yourself to see where you stack up well, everything from employment growth to educational attainment to the ability to attract educated workers. We'll look at often things like poverty and housing prices as well. We'll look at the projected employment performance, both historically as well as going forward post-pandemic. We're also going to do a primary employer survey and ask employers, what skills are you really needing now and into the future? What positions are hard to fill right now? We usually ask, how do you engage with educators or local government to meet your needs? And so this will be a great way to get direct feedback from your employers on what their needs are. This education infrastructure analysis will be a scan of how you produce college graduates. We'll look at some high school programs as well. I think it'll be a great way to understand, how well the education system is really delivering the workforce that's needed for those employers we just surveyed. This talent flow analysis is a deep dive into some really good government data that tells us not only how many people you have, but also whether those people commute in or commute out, and so I'll show you an example of that in a minute. We'll look at your entrepreneurial environment as part of this evaluation. The target analysis, I don't want to go too deep here for the sake of time, but we're going to look at the industry clusters that you have, look at traditional industries, emerging industries, and come to you with a list of recommended targets, niche sectors within those targets, and I'll show you an example in a minute, and then deliver some profiles so you understand really what's driving those industries. Like I said, we're going to be looking at your sites to make sure that you have the sites available to attract those industries and also have the incentives. Next slide, please. We'll end with that economic development benchmarking with organizations, as I mentioned. So that'll all happen over 5 months. Here's an example that a recent client of ours, Georgetown, Texas, they're a northern suburb of Austin. What we discovered in that talent flow analysis is that a lot of people live there who don't work there. So 15,000 people employed in Georgetown who drive in, 18,000 people who live there that drive out, and only about 5,000 people that actually live and work in Georgetown. So that to us means there's a lot of opportunity to create greater alignment between the workforce and the employer base. Next slide, please. What we can get when we do this deep dive is understand the industries that are importing workers or losing workers, and also the occupations that those workers have. So in this case, Georgetown was having to import a lot of, exporting a lot of professional and business services people who would leave the city for work. At the same time, they were importing education and health workers and also government. A lot of those you'll see are police officers who probably can't afford to live there, but drive in for jobs. Next slide. And there you'll see the ratio of residents employed in specific occupations compared to the number of jobs available in the city. So here we see that a lot of people commute in and can contrast where they live versus where they work. And so it's going to be a great way to dive into the workforce analysis. Again, for the sake of time, I'll go to the next slide. We look at targets really from a regional perspective, so that Opportunity Austin target in the middle is what the Austin region is targeting. On the right side, we would look at Texas targets. And so within that larger target list, we would then identify what's a good fit for Georgetown. In this case, we picked 3 buckets: advanced manufacturing, life sciences, and professional services, which aligned with Austin and Texas. And you can see that there's some really good energy and advanced manufacturing potential as well, both in Georgetown and in Austin. So we'll usually dive into a niche target list beyond this sort of high-level view so that you understand what you have, as well as what's a good fit based on that target industry analysis. Next slide. And after we did our work back in, I want to say 2016, 2017, we were happy to see that their growth in those target industries did exceed their overall growth rate. So you can see advanced manufacturing, professional services, and life sciences were successful target campaigns for Georgetown. I don't know if there's another slide, so I'll pause there. We can bounce back to the project timeline, and right there at 15 minutes. So, Kevin.
Well, I'm super impressed, Chris.
I know.
Wow.
We can pause now, but I think what I'll do is I'll hand it back to Devin, and we can open it up for questions after she's finished her presentation.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. So can I have that PowerPoint? Yes, thank you. So I just wanted to cover the budget terms and conditions. So the overall cost of the proposal is $147,085. With the way we would split it is $100,000 from SLDC and the remainder from SL4B. This is pretty consistent with how we currently have it budgeted in our budget forecasting. with a little bit more of the support coming from the SLDC. And this is for the three main components of the workforce analysis, target industry analysis, and the benchmarking. Chris covered that it would be a 5-month timeline. So if we were to be able to continue with our timeline that we have proposed, we would start in April and conclude at the end of August. This would also be really good timing for, I think, what we're coming out of this COVID restriction time, and would be able to hit the ground running in the fall when a lot of the conferences and outreach efforts are underway for business recruitment. All engagement for this will be virtual, but if travel restrictions are lifted and travel is deemed necessary for the project, we will reassess that at this time. But due to the current climate and kind of how things have been done, everything will be virtual. And we did have, just as a side, but I think all of you know, we kind of asked Amy and Chris, like, well, how successful have your projects been that have had this all virtual kind of element to it? And they shared, which has been consistent with what the city has found as well, is that really this virtual format has allowed more people to be involved and engaged, because they are not having to worry about getting to a physical, location in order to do that engagement. And so we have no concerns about this being a very successful outcome, with it being in all the engagement being virtual. Next slide, please. So here's just some next steps to kind of cover the process. We've already discussed this with the Economic Development Committee. You all received a memo before we released the RFP on January 13th. And then here we are in the joint workshop. We will, the next steps would be consideration of a funding resolution from each board, because the boards will be authorizing or being asked to authorize funding for this contract, with the final contract consideration being considered by the city council. And so we would begin phase 1 with, obviously, this contract is just covering our phase 1 work, but don't want to forget that phase 2 will be coming, and we will determine that timeline at a later date. So with that, I think that we are ready to open this up for questions. And just wanted, yes, you can leave that project rules up there if you'd like, because I think there might be some questions on it, or we could just pull it up as people think of questions that they might have. But want to open that up for discussion. I'll just add that I'm personally very excited about this opportunity. Over the last year and a half or so, we've had some anecdotal evidence of life science related workforce that we have here in Sugar Land due to our proximity to the Med Center, but we don't really have any data that is really showing us that. And so I see this as a way of being able to really bring that data to the forefront and being able to actively use that in our business recruitment. We know this kind of anecdotally that we have this workforce for life sciences. Maybe there's some other workforce and talent pool that we have that we don't know about and that we should be taking advantage of. And so that's one of the things that makes me really excited about being able to get our hands on some of this data and be able to use it efficiently in our business recruitment efforts. So with that, I will just open it up to any questions that you all might have.
Thank you, Devin, and thank you, Amy and Chris. It was a pleasure to meet both of you from EY. Are there any questions from the Board of Directors? Yes, Director McCutcheon.
Yeah, thank you. I know that price is only one out of four, I believe, 4 criteria, and just staying qualitative and not quantitative. Was there a large spread in the cost, or is it fairly a narrow cost range? Out of curiosity.
It was a narrow cost range.
Okay, thank you.
Director Porter has a question.
I do. The third part of this evaluation is focused on our organization, if I understood the process correctly. And what my question is what is your experience with your other clients in terms of what typically is are the recommendations like relative to the organization that's sponsoring this, so we get an idea of what you might be recommending in general? I know you haven't evaluated our organization yet, but what types of recommendations have you made to other ED organizations that would give us some kind of a feel for what we might hear from you on our organization?
And before I hand that over to Amy, Mr. Porter, I just want to clarify, it is just focused on the Economic Development Department for our 4A, 4B corporations, not the city hall as a whole.
That's correct.
Yeah, thanks for the question. I'm happy to answer that. So you're right, at the end of the project, we will be doing some benchmarking work looking at how your economic development department is structured and funded relative to other competitor departments in other cities across Texas. We'll work with you to determine what those cities are that we look at. But in other projects, this is something that we typically conclude a project with. We want to make sure that our clients are organized in a way that will help them implement our recommendations. So we may be making recommendations around, staff positions, not individual staff members, but for example, you may need another business development person in order to, go attract the types of companies that we're recommending. It may be something budget related, shifting money from one place to another to make sure that you're properly resourced for a targeted economic development initiative. It may also be something related to your relationship with other partners in the community, how to engage, for example, your private sector businesses in a targeted approach, or your education providers, if there's a need to ramp up certain training and education for skill sets that are needed by your target industries. So it's hard to tell what that's going to be for Sugarland yet, but that's the type of thing that we would look at when we look at organizational questions. Does that help?
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate that.
I think we have a question from Amy.
Yes, hi, thank you. With the pandemic, obviously, a lot of companies have changed the way they're doing things. Devin mentioned life sciences, and although, yes, there are remote medical type facilities, I also get that there are certain tests, different things that have to be done in person. So knowing our proximity to the medical center and such, don't want it to be a foregone conclusion, yet I can see that. In more recent, since the pandemic, what have you seen that has changed that you might have in the past thought would be one that was brought, or an area, a target industry, and you now feel that that isn't something that really has helped a community?
Chris, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, I'll answer that. I think that, everybody's reevaluating. I think companies are reevaluating. I think communities are reevaluating. When it comes to, the remote work issue, I think, cities are realizing that, you may win the jobs, but the remote workers may not be living there. And that's just the current situation. And I think a lot of companies are asking, where can we put people in the right place at the right cost and have everybody networked? I can tell you from EY's perspective, we've gone completely virtual, and we're probably going to stay very virtual as an organization. So professional services, IT, tech, but you're right, medical is, you got to be in person to get that service. Telemedicine is certainly taking off, and I think people will become much more comfortable with that. But at the same time, we're looking at industries like distribution and warehousing, and it's probably not something you're too interested in, but some of those lower skilled jobs, communities are saying, wow, we've got incredible opportunities here. And that pre-pandemic, we'd say, yeah, let's win those jobs, but they may not be high enough paying jobs, or jobs that have a lot of career potential. So let's be a bit more strategic. We will bring those ideas and thinking and research into this target industry process for you.
Yeah, I just want to jump in from a state perspective. I was actually 2 hours ago facilitating a panel with Adriana Cruz. Adriana Cruz is the head of economic development for Governor Abbott. So she's the head of economic development for the state of Texas. And just hearing from her, first of all, yesterday Texas won the Governor's Cup Award again, which is like the 9th year that we've won, and all the other states are completely embarrassed that they can't compete with Texas. But Texas has had a phenomenal year in economic development. Texas has attracted 4 Fortune 500 headquarters. And this is where I'm going for Sugar Land. You know, that opportunity, these businesses that are leaving these high cost environments from California, from Chicago, from New York, we're absolutely seeing headquarters locations moving, or at least a portion of their activity moving to states like Texas, or maybe a Georgia, maybe a Florida. So it's gotten us pretty excited, honestly, about opportunities for Texas communities. We're in a good place as a state, and also rethinking. They're rethinking at the state level incentives based on how you count remote workers as jobs, and I think they're going to be doing some more innovative things around that.
Thank you.
Are there any more questions from either corporation? No? Well, thank you so much, Devin and Amy and Chris, for your presentation. And with that, I'd like to move on to item number 4, quarterly report. Item A, review of and discussion on the Sugar Land Development Corporation and Sugar Land 4B Corporation fiscal year 2021 first quarter report. Devin Rodriguez, Economic Development Assistant Director.
So I always have trouble with my sharing screen. So give me 1 second to always resolve my issues here. But overall, the quarterly report, we're doing this as one all together here. I'm sorry, my presentation's not where it was. So I will just review with you guys just my notes, since it doesn't seem to be coming up here because it went missing from my file. But wanted to highlight some of our quarterly reports. So this is from October through December. And you all should have received the electronic report this afternoon via email. So please let us know if you had any challenges with accessing that at all. But for the year-to-date, the sales tax performance for quarter 1, we had the total sales tax collections of $12.25 million for the year, with reoccurring sales tax collections of a little under $12 million. So the city's still accumulated approximately $2.66 million in additional sales tax revenue over our budgeted amount. So things are still heading in the right direction, even with all the challenges that have happened via COVID for our financials. As for business development, the office vacancy has increased slightly from last quarter to 13%. So over the last year, it's gone from about 9%, or last year and a half, about 9% to 13%. Still not super high compared to some of our other partners in the region, but definitely the office workplace trends that have resulted from COVID-19, such as the telecommuting, the hybrid work schedules, have impacted some of the office. So some of the office users that have had their leases come up, they have realized, well, maybe we don't need this much space. We only need this amount of space. So there is a more than we previously had a year ago sublease space on the market. But the business development division has been actively working with some of our leasing agents that represent some of our largest buildings, largest office buildings, in order to fill some of those spaces. And we've actually responded to, we just got our first office lead from the state and regional that we hadn't seen in a while. So, and I just got off of a site selectors table talk where we were all talking about how some of those decisions are starting to uptick a little bit. People are starting to look around rather than sort of the wait and see. So I think that we'll start to see some changes in the next year. Definitely there's going to be an impact to the office market, but the office industry is not going to be going away. For the industrial vacancy, the rate has decreased slightly from last quarter, so it still remains very low at 1.9%. And we are still seeing a huge demand for industrial space. This is part of the pandemic. It was happening before the pandemic, and it's only continued as the pandemic has rolled on. We all are getting all these deliveries at our homes, and that requires more warehouse and office and distribution space, as well as some of the manufacturing that's also occurring. For the Sugar Land Business Park, it is still expanding. We are very close to the build out now, but we do have our new 320,000 square foot industrial development by Lovett Industrial that you all recently heard about last in the fall, and they are under construction now. And then Sugar Land Crossroads, which is a development by Transwestern, about the same size, they are nearing completion and they are actively leasing for that site as well. And so we've been working with both groups on the leads that we see come through for all sorts of manufacturing, warehouse, and distribution type spaces. Retail. So the retail vacancy rate has remained flat from last quarter. I know retail sort of, I guess, a little bit surprising considering the major impacts that has happened to retail due to the pandemic, but retail continues to operate and just using safe practices that resulted from the pandemic and social distancing and masks and disinfecting and setting occupancy limits. So all those things, I think a lot of the retailers are adapting to this new environment, and that we will continue to see sort of changes as it has always been the case in retail. It's always evolving at all times. And then just one, if you hadn't heard, we are accepting business applications for Sweet Cash. So want to make sure you all know about that. For any businesses that are looking, we are accepting those business applications. Stay tuned for more details on any sort of consumer aspect. For right now, we are accepting those business applications. As for tourism, obviously compared to last year's, the hotels have seen a much lower occupancy revenue per available room due to the pandemic. And so the tourism revenues are lower than last year due to this anticipated decline. But the hotels are seeing an increase in demand for future years, but they still have a ways to get back to those sort of pre-pandemic figures. They have had sort of booms in some of their occupancy, mainly related to natural disaster challenges that we've had over the last 5 to 6 months. So those things that have been challenging have actually benefited the hotel industry. And then as for marketing, in October, we entered into that agreement with DCI, which I mentioned previously, with our workforce. And so as part of that integrated marketing plan during Q1, staff began working with DCI to prepare our marketing immersion tour. The purpose of this tour is for DCI and our employers to learn more about Sugar Land through these conversations, and then allow us to kind of make those connections so that we can find those storylines and those things that we want to amplify about Sugar Land. To date, we have completed 11 interviews. Some of those have been by individuals, some of those have been in groups, but we've included 11 to date, and we'll be completing that immersion tour in this second quarter right now. Additionally, in Q1, we developed and launched the 'Tis the Season for Sweet Cash, which you have all heard about, but Q1 was the conclusion of that, and it was obviously a tremendous success, along with the Sugar Land movie series that we did over the holidays as well. So both of those were marketing campaigns that our department did during the first quarter. And then finally, just some highlights of things that we have in the news. So I know you have all seen and heard this, but we are still excited about it and want to talk about it. But the Sugar Land Skeeters are officially been designated as the Houston Astros AAA franchise. And so we are looking forward to the start of baseball season. So that was a lot of news and highlights about Sugar Land that we had related to that announcement. The University of Houston College of Technology also received, in Sugar Land, also received a $2 million gift for scholarships from HCSS, which is one of our local software employers here. So that was on behalf of an individual that passed away, but a wonderful contribution to the university in her name. And then there's been several new retail businesses that have opened during the pandemic. So like Sweet Pears Creperie and Cafe and the Painted Tree Marketplace. So if you are out and about and looking to get something savory and sweet, or looking to do a little retail shopping, please make sure you stop by those new establishments. And so that's all I have with the quarterly report. And apologies for the technical difficulties, but are there any questions?
Director Jacobson.
Thank you. Devin, on the report, it shows that Sugar Land year over year is down 12.2% in sales tax revenues, but our neighbors and statewide are relatively flat. What's the difference between us and them?
So we actually inquired with the finance department about this, and there's no clear answer. Some of it is that there has, the impacts of the pandemic, that perhaps with the reduction of people going into the office, that, or even some of our destination venues that we would typically attract people from outside of Sugar Land to shop and dine here, that could be impacting our sales tax numbers. The other thing that we don't know, what's hard to put your finger on, is some of our other neighboring communities, depending on how all these online shopping orders are sent in, when it gets shipped to your home, that's the destination. And so for some of our areas, which are technically in the county, not in the city boundaries, they're actually getting some of the funds, like, what's the terminology? But it's basically sort of like an audit of, oh no, that wasn't actually in, city of Richmond boundaries, that was in the county. So moving that money over to this pot over here. And the numbers that we get in order for doing our quarterly reports aren't reflective of those changes that occur. So we don't have any way of knowing sort of what the audited numbers are. So it could be a little bit of a differentiation in those types of things of some of those changes happening due to online orders. And also then just the changes that has happened in office employment and our destination venues. I mean, Smart Financial has not been open for almost a year now. And those all could be having impacts, whereas maybe some of the other communities that are residential based, mainly, and not having those large destination type features could be seeing a bump because of those online ordering. But we don't have any way of knowing for certain right now. We just have those kinds of theories.
Okay, thank you very much.
Any other questions?
Director Porter.
Thank you. Devin, it seems like you started this DCI process looking at what story to tell nationally. And now we're starting a new process to figure out who we want to be hearing our story. And it seems like we might be better served to make sure we finish the EY study before we construct storylines that may appeal to industries we're no longer going to target, or may not include industries we are going to target based on this new EY work. So I'm just curious about your thoughts on that.
So we have structured our immersion tour to, one, we've introduced them to a variety of different employers as well as kind of industry types. And then also like our broker and real estate community, so not just industry specific, but we are focusing on the industries that we don't anticipate will change. So, there are some things that we do not anticipate will change as part of the EY study. Energy is always going to be a big component in Houston. We in Sugar Land have a large presence from Champion X, from Schlumberger. from Fluor, from Noble. So that's a big industry cluster that we do not anticipate as being in the Houston region changing. So I don't see that, piece being an impact. Also, I think with all of our office infrastructure, we're still going to want to have a focus on office and headquarter type employment. And I don't think that is going to be going away. And actually, a lot of our larger employers, have expressed to us that there is going to be some form of remote work, but they've also noticed that there are elements of their business and brainstorming and creative things that really do need to happen in person. And so they might not be happening right now, but they do anticipate those things moving forward and happening in in-person format. So there are some things that just aren't going to be going away. And so as part of the DCI contract, we're going to be making sure that we're not going to be amplifying some industry that we aren't sure if maybe we really want to focus on. It's going to be the ones, at least in this interim period, that we know aren't going to be going away as part of Sugarland. And then it'll allow us, once the EY part concludes, that we'll be able to add on to. But we, some of this EY study is going to be, I anticipate, reaffirming our targeted industries and also maybe uncovering some targeted industries that we didn't know that we should be going after. And so we need to build those before we can then promote, look at the amazing stuff that's happening in Sugarland in this type. And DCI will help us tell that story when we do land that project of that new industry coming to Sugarland and showcasing sort of all the work that we've done in order to get to that point.
Yeah, and to add on to that real quick too, I think some of the work that DCI is doing is more lifestyle, and that's what's getting in the news. And so they're showcasing Sugarland, and our goal is to start telling the stories of we were a community that responded to this pandemic, to the winter storm, in a very positive way. We've gone above and beyond. So you're telling a story from a different perspective. We can sell our incentives and we can sell our real estate all day long, but when you join a community, it's more, you want that community to be supportive of you. You want to know that when you go through tough times, they're going to be there for you. So it's selling a different side of our city than we have ever done before, and hopefully getting a lot more traction and media attention around that. So I think this EY work, like Devin said, will continue to refine the target audience, but there's still just a general outreach of getting people aware with Sugarland, all the great things that we're doing and the great community that we are beyond what we beyond our residents. So does that help answer your question?
Yeah, no, I think that gets at it in terms of there's a difference, if I'm understanding you, in what the DCI work is. A big piece of that, not exclusively, but a big piece of that is lifestyle and why Sugarland should be created in the minds of people that think about lifestyle for their employees and for themselves if they're going to move. So thank you.
And to add on to that, some of the DCI is, we felt this, and DCI affirmed it through kind of some of the research that they did. Sugarland's really well known in Texas. We have a well known of who Sugarland, Texas is within Texas, but we want to get our foot in the door with companies outside of Texas. And DCI is going to help us to kind of elevate of what Sugarland means to people that don't live in Texas.
Any other questions for Devin? Okay, Director Porter. Steve. Director Porter.
Thank you. We have about built out is what I heard in our business park. And we've got another business park that's a greenfield location. How important is it for us to build it and they will come versus wait for someone to approach us that says, we'd like to move our headquarters and manufacturing there, but it's just a big grass field with a prison on it. what is your thinking, and is EY going to help us with that? It's very expensive to create a business park, and we really do need a partner for that. But it's just it's cheaper for us if somebody brings the money. But I would think it would be harder to sell somebody on it if it didn't exist yet.
So one thing that we didn't focus on heavily in the presentation, the EY presentation, but is part of our scope, is an evaluation of some of our, what I'm calling our opportunity sites. So we will, with the EY team and their site selector group, be putting together a list of 3 to 5 sites in Sugar Land and having them help us evaluate them in terms of the workforce data that we have and the targeted industry information that we have, and will help inform us on how we might want to take some next steps with some of these sites, whether it's sites that we control or we don't control. It will be good real estate data for us in taking those next steps. In certain situations, it is better to build it and they will come in terms of, like right now, in industrial, like warehouse and distribution type stuff. If you have a building and there's a company that really wants to get in there quickly and you already have it built and you have something to market, you definitely have a leg up. Now, there's always the downside of maybe the building's not built exactly how they want it. So it can go either way. I know for the central unit site that we have some infrastructure challenges that are things that we are actively working on. We need access to the site from a secondary location, not just the one off of 90 and across the railroad tracks there. So engineering and economic development are actively working with Fort Bend County to make that Owens Road connection, and those things are moving forward. We also have the flood mitigation that we have. So all of those things are site readiness things that we are actively working on to get that site. But to kind of your larger question of what will we eventually do with it, I think some of EY's work and with their site selector group will help us inform how we might want to take on some and next steps with some of our opportunity sites, while we're still moving forward with kind of laying the groundwork of what needs to happen on some of these sites, even for them to be developmentally ready. Did that help?
Sure. And just kind of a bottom line, are we moving at the right speed to develop the West Side Business Park?
I think I'll kick that one to Elizabeth.
So I think there's some development agreement work and other work that's happening with Track 2 that's a bit out of our control. I know we are close and doing everything we can from a city perspective to keep that moving and get it finalized, and so that we can proceed with the infrastructure work to make the business park a viable option and site ready.
So you wish it was going faster, I hear.
If I had my way, always.
Any other questions for Devin on item number 4? Okay, let's move on to item number 5, Director's Report. A, Marketing, Promotions, and Events. Strategic and Capital Projects, Business Recruitment and Retention Efforts. Elizabeth Huff, Director of Economic Development.
Good afternoon. Devin covered everything in the quarterly reports. All I would ask of you all is to continue to help spread the word on our allinforsltx.com website and let people know about Sweet Cash, the placemaking, and our recent announcement for Open Call for Art. So excited about all the work. We are knee deep in reviewing applications and moving those projects forward, and excited about all the great things to come. And we'll be bringing y'all an update here soon. So with that, that's the end of my report, and I hope you all have a great evening.
Okay, Elizabeth, thank you. Any other questions from any other directors? Okay, and with that, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Okay, I have a motion by Director McCutcheon. And then I guess a separate adjournment for the SL4B meeting.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Think for that as well.
Okay, very good. Okay, meeting adjourned. Thank you.